Maya worked quietly in the busy city hospital every day, and most people barely noticed her, even though she was always on time. Always clean, always ready to help, and always careful with every patient she touched and spoke to, because she believed. Kindness was more powerful than loud words and big smiles. Yet many nurses around her did not see this. They only saw a silent, black nurse who did not join their jokes, did not talk about weekend parties, and did not sit in the lunchroom gossiping about others, so they whispered that she was strange, boring, slow, and maybe not smart enough to speak up. And sometimes, when she passed by, they laughed softly and rolled their eyes, and Maya heard them, but she never answered back. She only lowered her head and continued walking because her heart was gentle and her past was heavy. And she did not want trouble. She wanted peace and healing and simple days, where she could help sick people feel better and go home safe. And on this day, the hospital was louder than usual. Stretchers moved fast, shoes tapped hard on the floor, phones rang, nurses called doctors, shouting orders, and patients filled every room and hallway, and the air felt tight and rushed like a storm inside a building. Yet Maya moved, calmly checking blood pressure, changing sheets, giving water, speaking softly to scare patients who held her hand and thanked her for her warm voice and steady care. And she smiled kindly even when others ignored her. And then, without warning, a deep, heavy sound pushed through the walls like thunder rolling across the sky, and the windows began to shake slightly, and a strong wind pushed dust and paper across the parking lot outside, and everyone froze because the sound was not a normal city sound. It was strong, powerful, and strange, and someone whispered, "What is that?" And another nurse rushed to the window, and her eyes opened wide, and she shouted, "There's a helicopter coming," and people ran to see, and outside a massive Navy helicopter slowly lowered onto the helipad, with spinning blades cutting the air and blowing leaves and dust in every direction, and sunlight reflected off its dark body, making it look strong and serious, and people stared with open mouths because the hospital was not near any military base, and nothing like this had ever happened before, and fear and excitement mixed in the air like electricity. And doctors paused, nurses stopped walking, patients pressed their faces to windows, and phones came out to record. And nobody knew what was happening, and some joked nervously, saying, "Maybe a movie star is coming, or maybe a big emergency." But deep inside, everyone felt something important was about to happen. And the helicopter landed firmly, and the blades slowed, and the loud noise softened into a heavy hum, and a tall Navy officer stepped out wearing a clean uniform with a serious face and sharp eyes, and he walked quickly toward the hospital doors with 2 soldiers behind him, and security rushed to open the entrance, and everyone went silent, as if the air itself was holding its breath, and the officer entered the main hallway, looked around the crowded room, and spoke in a strong, clear voice, asking, "Where is Nurse Maya Johnson?" And the words echoed across the hall, and people looked at each other in confusion because nobody expected that name, and some laughed quietly, thinking it was a mistake because Maya was only a quiet nurse who pushed carts and cleaned wounds and never talked about big things. And a few nurses glanced toward Maya with teasing smiles, as if this was a joke made for her. But Maya felt her heart jump hard inside her chest, and her hands trembled slightly as she held a patient chart, and she lifted her eyes slowly because she knew that voice and that tone from a life she had tried to leave behind, and her breathing became shallow, and memories flashed through her mind like quick light, and the room felt smaller and warmer and quieter all at once, and the officer repeated the name again more firmly. And Maya took one small step forward, and then another, and the crowd slowly opened a path, as if guided by an invisible force, and whispers began to spread, saying, "Why would the Navy look for her, and did she do something wrong, and is this real?" And Maya stood straight and spoke softly but clearly, saying, "I'm Maya Johnson." And the officer's face changed from serious to relieved and respectful, and he nodded and walked directly toward her and stopped at a polite distance and said, "We need your help immediately." A Navy SEAL is missing during a rescue mission, and you are the only one who can help us find him." And the hallway filled with shocked gasps and wide eyes and mouths dropped open and laughter disappeared completely, and the nurses who once mocked her felt their stomachs tighten with surprise and fear because the quiet nurse they ignored was suddenly connected to something brave and dangerous and important, and Maya felt the weight of many eyes on her, and she swallowed slowly, feeling fear rise like a cold wave. Yet her heart also felt strong because deep inside she knew this moment would come someday, even if she hoped it would not, and she closed her eyes briefly and remembered long nights under bright lights, saving injured soldiers, calming pain, guiding hands, trusting teamwork, and she remembered lost sadness and promises she made to herself to live quietly and safely, and the officer waited patiently because he knew this was not easy. And Maya opened her eyes again and looked around at the hospital that had become her quiet shelter, and then back at the officer and gave a small steady nod saying she would help, and a low wave of whispers rolled through the crowd, and respect slowly replaced doubt in many faces, and the people who laughed before now felt shame burn in their cheeks and regret sit heavy in their hearts, and Maya walked forward with calm steps toward the exit while the helicopter blades slowly began to spin again outside, and the wind touched her face like a call from the past, and she felt both fear and purpose move inside her together. And in that moment, the quiet nurse everyone ignored became the center of a powerful story that no one in that hospital would ever forget, and the first wave of change had already begun. Maya walked beside the Navy officer through the wide hospital hallway, while people stepped aside to make space, and the sound of their shoes echoed softly against the clean floor, and her heart beat fast, but her face stayed calm because she had learned long ago how to hide fear behind steady breathing and simple focus. And the nurses who once laughed at her now watched with wide eyes and tight lips, and some whispered her name, as if trying to understand the truth standing in front of them, and the officer spoke gently, telling her his name was Captain Reed, and thanking her for coming so quickly, and Maya nodded quietly, keeping her eyes forward, because her thoughts were busy with questions about the missing soldier and memories she had tried to forget. And outside the glass doors, the helicopter waited like a powerful animal ready to fly, and the wind from its blades lifted small pieces of dust and paper into the air, and the smell of fuel mixed with the clean hospital scent. Maya paused for a moment at the door and took one slow breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle into her chest, and Captain Reed noticed her hesitation and said softly, "You are safe with us, and we truly need your skills." And Maya gave a small thankful smile and stepped outside into the bright light, where the sun touched the metal body of the helicopter and made it shine like silver, and the sound grew louder and stronger, making it hard to hear, and two soldiers helped guide her toward the open door while holding their helmets firmly, and Maya carefully climbed inside and sat on the bench seat, holding on to the safety strap and feeling the vibration of the engine move through her body like a deep drum. And Captain Reed sat across from her and leaned closer so she could hear him, and explained that a Navy SEAL team had been sent on a rescue mission in a remote mountain area after a small group of hikers went missing during a storm, and the mission was supposed to be fast and safe, but heavy fog and sharp rocks caused trouble, and during the return flight, one of the SEAL members, named Daniel, became separated from the group after helping an injured hiker reach safety, and his signal device was damaged and sending weak, broken signals that were hard to follow, and several search teams had tried to locate him, but the terrain was dangerous and time was running out because the weather was turning cold and night was approaching, and Daniel had lost blood and needed medical care quickly. And Captain Reed looked directly into Maya's eyes and said, "Years ago, you trained Daniel during his medical recovery after a difficult mission. You helped him walk again. You helped him trust his body again, and you learned his breathing patterns, his pain signs, and the way he responds to stress better than anyone else. And he always said if he was ever in trouble, he would want you there. And Maya felt her chest tighten and her eyes soften as she remembered Daniel's kind smile and stubborn courage and the long hours she spent encouraging him when he wanted to give up. And she whispered his name quietly and nodded, understanding the importance of the mission, and the helicopter lifted smoothly into the air, and the hospital became smaller below them like a tiny model, and the city stretched out with buildings and roads and moving cars looking like thin lines and dots. And Maya watched the view, but her mind stayed focused on Daniel and the task ahead, and Captain Reed handed her a headset so she could hear clearly and explained the current search area using a digital map and pointed to the mountains where the signal last appeared. And Maya studied the screen carefully, noticing the pattern of the broken signal lines, and something about it felt wrong to her because she remembered how Daniel once explained that his emergency device had a backup pulse that blinked every few seconds in a steady rhythm, but the map showed uneven gaps and weak jumps, which meant the signal might be bouncing off rock walls instead of coming directly from his location. And Maya shared this thought with Captain Reed and the pilot, and they listened closely because this small detail could change everything. And the pilot adjusted the directions slightly, following Maya's suggestion, and the helicopter turned smoothly and began flying toward a different path between two mountain ridges, and clouds started to gather slowly, and the air felt cooler, and the light dimmed, and Maya tightened her seatbelt and closed her eyes for a brief moment, praying quietly for safety and strength. And when she opened them again, she felt more focused and ready, and minutes passed like slow heartbeats as they flew over trees and rocky land, and the radio crackled with updates from other search teams who had found no clear signs yet, and worry grew in every voice. But Maya stayed calm and kept studying the signal map, and finally she noticed a faint, steady blink hidden beneath the noise, and she pointed it out excitedly and said, "There it is, that is his backup pulse." And the pilot zoomed in and adjusted the altitude, and the helicopter slowed slightly and moved carefully, following the weak blinking signal. And soon they spotted a narrow valley between tall rocks, and the pilot circled once, and everyone looked down searching, and suddenly one of the soldiers pointed and shouted there, and Maya leaned forward and saw a small movement near a fallen tree, and her heart jumped because it looked like a person waving weakly. And Captain Reed ordered the pilot to prepare for a safe landing zone nearby, and the helicopter hovered gently while wind pushed leaves and dust, and the soldiers prepared their ropes and medical gear. And Maya felt a wave of emotion rise in her chest because hope was now real and close, and she held her bag tightly and took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm and focused because Daniel would need clear hands and steady care. And as the helicopter lowered slightly closer to the ground, Maya whispered quietly, "Hold on, Daniel, I am coming." And the team prepared to move quickly, knowing every second mattered, and the mission had entered its most critical moment. And the second wave of this powerful story was now unfolding with courage, trust, and the strength of quiet heroes guiding the way forward. The helicopter hovered carefully above the narrow valley, while the wind pushed hard against the tall trees, and loose leaves swirled in fast circles below, and the sound of the spinning blades filled the air like rolling thunder. And Maya held onto the side handle tightly as the soldiers prepared to move down using strong safety ropes, and Captain Reed gave clear, calm orders through the headset, making sure everyone stayed focused and safe. And Maya watched the ground closely, searching for any sign of Daniel's movement. And when the first soldier touched the rocky ground, he signaled that the area was stable and safe enough for landing. And slowly the helicopter lowered until its wheels touched the uneven earth, and the engine power softened slightly, while still ready to lift at any moment. And the door opened, and cool mountain air rushed inside, carrying the smell of wet soil and pine trees. And Maya stepped down, carefully feeling the rough ground under her shoes, and her heart beat strong in her chest, but her mind stayed clear and steady like still water. and the team moved quickly toward the fallen tree, where they had seen movement, and as they walked, Maya noticed broken branches and scraped rocks, which told a story of someone struggling to move while injured, and she followed these signs, naturally because years of emergency work had trained her eyes to read small details that others often missed, and the soldiers kept watch around them while Captain Reed stayed close to Maya, asking softly if she was ready, and she nodded and said she was, and they reached the fallen tree, and there they saw Daniel lying on his side, partially covered by leaves and dirt, and his face looked pale and tired, and his breathing was shallow. But when Maya knelt beside him and gently touched his shoulder, his eyes opened slowly and a weak smile formed on his lips, and he whispered, "Maya, you came," and her eyes filled with tears. But she smiled warmly and said, "Of course I came. You are not allowed to leave this world without saying goodbye properly." And Daniel gave a soft, weak laugh, and Maya quickly shifted into full medical focus, checking his breathing, his pulse, his temperature, and the color of his skin, and she noticed a deep cut on his leg that had been tied tightly with a cloth to slow bleeding and signs of dehydration and exhaustion, and she praised him quietly for doing a good job keeping pressure on the wound, and told him help was here and he was safe now. And the soldiers prepared a stretcher while Maya cleaned the wound carefully using her medical kit and applied fresh bandages and gentle pressure, and spoke calmly to keep Daniel awake and relaxed. And Daniel told her in short, broken sentences how he had helped carry an injured hiker across slippery rocks when the fog grew thick, and he slipped and fell and hit his leg hard, and his radio cracked and stopped working fully, and he tried to move toward higher ground to get signal, but his strength faded, and the cold made his body heavy, and Maya listened carefully and encouraged him with soft words and steady eye contact, and soon the stretcher was ready, and the team carefully lifted Daniel onto it and secured him safely and began moving back toward the helicopter while staying alert to the uneven terrain and loose stones, and Maya walked beside Daniel, holding his hand gently and reminding him to stay awake and breathe slowly, and he squeezed her hand weakly, showing he trusted her completely. And when they reached the helicopter, the soldiers lifted Daniel inside first and placed him on the medical bench, and Maya climbed in next and continued monitoring his condition while Captain Reed informed the pilot they were ready for takeoff, and the helicopter lifted smoothly, leaving the valley behind, and the mountains slowly drifted away beneath them, and Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she stayed focused because Daniel still needed care, and she checked his pulse again and adjusted the bandage and gave him small sips of water and spoke encouraging words about the hospital and warm blankets and rest, and Daniel smiled faintly and thanked her for never giving up on him, and she told him quietly that everyone deserves someone who believes in them, especially when they are weak and tired. And the flight back felt calmer, but heavy clouds began to gather again, and light rain tapped against the helicopter windows, and the pilot navigated carefully through the changing weather, and Captain Reed updated the hospital about their arrival and prepared the medical team to receive Daniel quickly, and Maya closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting herself feel the emotion she had held back: fear, relief, gratitude, and pride. And she realized that even though she had tried to live a quiet, hidden life, her true strength had always been inside her, waiting for moments like this to rise and serve others. And when she opened her eyes, she looked at Daniel, who was resting more peacefully now, and she felt a deep sense of purpose and peace. And the helicopter finally reached the city skyline, and the hospital came into view below, and the helipad waited like a safe island, and the helicopter landed gently, and medical staff rushed forward with a stretcher and equipment, and Daniel was carefully transferred into their care, and Maya followed closely, giving quick, clear updates about his condition and treatment, and the doctors thanked her for her excellent work and moved Daniel toward the emergency room, and Captain Reed turned to Maya and shook her hand firmly with respect and gratitude, saying, "You saved his life today." And Maya smiled softly and said it was a team effort, And as she walked back into the hospital hallway, she noticed the same nurses who once laughed at her now standing, quietly watching her with new eyes, filled with respect and surprise and some whispered apologies and thank yous, and Maya nodded kindly, because she held no anger in her heart, only understanding and hope, and she returned to her locker area and changed back into her normal scrubs, feeling both tired and strong, and the busy hospital noise returned around her, but it sounded different. Now, like a familiar song instead of chaos, and she realized that her quiet life had gained new meaning, not because people finally saw her, but because she remembered who she truly was and what she was capable of. And the third wave of this powerful journey ended with healing trust and the silent strength of a nurse who never needed loud words to make a deep difference in the world. The next morning, sunlight slipped gently through the tall hospital windows and painted long, soft lines across the clean floor, and the air smelled of fresh coffee, warm blankets, and quiet hope, and Maya walked into the building with slow, steady steps, feeling the tiredness in her muscles from the long night, yet her heart felt light and peaceful because Daniel was safe and recovering, and the heavy fear from the rescue mission had finally eased. And as she passed the front desk, a young nurse smiled warmly and said, "Good morning, Maya," and the kindness in her voice felt new and sincere. And Maya returned the smile softly, realizing that small changes were already beginning to grow inside the hospital walls, and she went to check on Daniel before starting her regular duties. And when she entered his room, he was resting comfortably with clean bandages and steady monitors, and sunlight touched his face gently, and when he opened his eyes and saw her, he smiled wider than before and said, "Looks like angels really do wear scrubs." And Maya laughed quietly and told him he still had bad jokes even after everything. And they both shared a light moment that warmed the room, and Daniel thanked her again for coming for him and said he would not have made it without her. And Maya reminded him that his strength and courage carried him through, and that teamwork saved lives, and not one person alone. And Daniel nodded, understanding the truth in her words, and they spoke briefly about his recovery plan and rest, and Maya promised to check on him later and left the room feeling thankful and grounded. And as she walked through the hallway, she noticed people greeting her more often and with respect, and even doctors paused to thank her for her help during the rescue. And although Maya appreciated the kindness, she stayed humble and focused on her work, because helping others was always her true goal. And during the afternoon, Captain Reed returned to the hospital to complete reports, and he found Maya organizing supplies in a quiet corner and thanked her once more for her bravery and skill. And he shared that the rescued hikers were also safe and grateful, and that Daniel's family had been informed and would arrive soon. And Maya felt relief hearing this and said she was glad everything had ended well. And Captain Reed asked her gently if she ever considered returning to field rescue work, because her talent and calm strength were rare and valuable. And Maya paused thoughtfully, because this question touched a deep place in her heart, where old memories and quiet dreams lived. And she explained that after losing someone she cared deeply about during a past mission, she chose a quieter life to heal and protect her heart. And Captain Reed listened with respect and understanding, and said sometimes the strongest healing comes from helping again when the time feels right. And he left her with those gentle words, and Maya carried them quietly in her thoughts as the day continued. And later that evening, Maya sat alone in the small hospital garden, where flowers grew between stone paths and birds rested in nearby trees, and she closed her eyes and allowed herself to reflect on her journey, her silence, her fears, her strength, and the unexpected courage that still lived inside her. And she realized that silence had protected her, but it also hidden parts of her that wanted to serve more deeply and connect with others again. And she did not rush to make any decision, but she allowed the idea of growth to gently enter her heart like warm sunlight after a long winter. And inside the hospital, the nurses continued their busy routines, but the atmosphere felt kinder and more respectful. than before, and small conversations replaced harsh jokes, and teamwork grew stronger because they had witnessed something powerful that changed how they saw one another. And Maya's quiet presence had become a reminder that strength comes in many forms and not always loud voices and bold actions. And that night, as Maya prepared to leave work, she received a message that Daniel's parents had arrived and wished to meet her, and she felt a nervous warmth in her chest, but agreed and walked to the waiting area where a kind older couple stood holding hands. And when they saw Maya, they stepped forward with grateful tears in their eyes and hugged her, gently thanking her for bringing their son back safely. And Maya felt deeply touched and emotional, and she reassured them that Daniel was strong and healing well. And the parents shared stories about Daniel's childhood kindness and courage, and Maya smiled, listening and feeling connected to a family who had trusted her with something precious. And after saying goodbye, Maya walked home under the soft evening sky, feeling full of gratitude and quiet pride. And as days passed, Daniel continued to recover, and Maya visited him, often bringing encouragement and simple humor. And they spoke about life, dreams, and the future, and Daniel shared that he wanted to help train young soldiers with better safety and care because of what he had learned from the accident. And Maya supported his idea and felt inspired by his determination. And one afternoon, Daniel surprised Maya by asking her if she would speak at a small hospital gathering about the importance of calm care and teamwork. And Maya felt nervous because public speaking was not her comfort, but she agreed because she wanted to honor the lesson the rescue had taught everyone. And on the day of the gathering, staff gathered in a simple meeting room, and Maya stood quietly at the front, holding a small paper with notes, and took a deep breath and spoke in simple, honest words about caring for people, listening deeply, staying calm during chaos, and respecting every person, no matter how quiet or different they may appear. And her voice was soft but strong, and the room stayed silent with attention, and many people felt moved by her sincerity and courage. And after she finished, gentle applause filled the room, and Maya felt proud, not because of attention, but because she had shared something meaningful and true. And later that evening, she sat again in the garden watching the sunset colors paint the sky, and she realized that this experience had not only saved a life, but also awakened her own spirit and reminded her that she did not need to hide anymore, and that quiet strength could shine just as brightly as loud bravery, and that life sometimes sends unexpected moments to guide people back to their true path. And Maya smiled peacefully, feeling ready to embrace whatever future waited for her, whether in quiet hospital halls or brave rescue missions, or somewhere in between. And the fourth wave of her story closed with growth, healing, respect, and the gentle rise of new hope, guiding her forward into the next chapter of her journey. The days continued to move forward gently like a calm river, and the hospital slowly returned to its normal rhythm of footsteps, voices, machines, and quiet moments of care. Yet something deep had changed inside the walls and inside Maya herself. And every time she walked through the hallway, people greeted her with warmth and respect, and she answered with soft smiles and kind words, because she never wanted pride to replace humility. And one morning, Maya received a message that Daniel was ready to take his first supported walk after the injury, and he had asked if she would be there. And Maya felt happy and honored, and quickly finished her duties and walked toward the recovery room, where sunlight filled the space and light music played softly. And Daniel sat at the edge of the bed, wearing support wraps around his leg and holding the bars carefully. And when he saw Maya, he smiled wide with determination and nervous excitement and said, "Today is the day, nurse hero." And Maya laughed lightly and reminded him to take slow, careful steps and trust his body again. And with the help of a therapist, Daniel slowly stood up, placing gentle pressure on his injured leg, and his face tightened slightly from effort, but his eyes stayed focused and hopeful. And Maya stood close, ready to support him if needed, and spoke calm, encouraging words reminding him to breathe and keep balance, and after a few slow steps, Daniel reached the chair across the room, and everyone smiled proudly, and Maya felt her heart swell with joy, because recovery moments like this were quiet miracles that reminded her why she loved caring for people. And Daniel rested and thanked her again for always believing in him, and Maya reminded him that belief starts inside in others, only help awaken it. And later that afternoon, Maya was invited by the hospital manager to attend a small appreciation meeting where staff members gathered to recognize teamwork and compassion. And although Maya felt shy, she accepted and sat quietly as stories were shared about how people supported one another during busy shifts and emergencies. And when Maya's name was mentioned, the room filled with warm applause and kind words about her calm presence, dedication, and courage during the rescue. And Maya felt her cheeks warm but her heart grateful, and she stood briefly and thanked everyone, reminding them that true care comes from respect, patience, and teamwork, and that every person matters, whether loud or quiet. And the message touched many hearts, and after the meeting, several nurses approached her and apologized for past behavior and thanked her for inspiring them to be better. And Maya accepted their words kindly because she believed growth was more important than blame. And as evening arrived, Maya walked outside into the soft golden light and noticed a small group of children visiting the hospital garden with their parents. And one little girl waved at Maya and said, "You are the nurse from the helicopter story." And Maya smiled and waved back, feeling surprised and touched that even young hearts had been inspired by something good. And this simple moment filled her with quiet happiness. And later that night, Maya sat at home reading a book when her phone buzzed, and it was a message from Captain Reed inviting her to visit the training center someday to speak with young medics about calm thinking during emergencies. And Maya paused thoughtfully, feeling both nervous and excited. And she realized that her journey might be expanding in new, gentle ways that allowed her to share her experience without returning fully to danger. And she replied, thanking him and saying she would consider it. And as the days passed, Maya continued balancing her regular hospital work with occasional visits to Daniel, who grew stronger each day. And one afternoon, Daniel shared his plan to start a community program for injured hikers and outdoor workers to teach safety, awareness, and emergency response. And he invited Maya to help guide the medical side of the program. And Maya felt honored and saw this as another way to serve and connect without fear. And they discussed simple ideas and hopes for the future, and laughter filled the room as they dreamed about small positive changes they could make together. And Maya noticed how joy had returned naturally into her life, not through noise or attention, but through purpose, connection, and gentle courage. And one evening, while walking home under a sky filled with stars, Maya reflected on how far she had come from the quiet nurse who hid behind silence and fear to a woman who now allowed her light to softly touch others. And she realized that bravery does not always mean running toward danger. Sometimes it means opening your heart again, trusting people, and believing in your own worth and strength. And as she entered her home, she felt peaceful and ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. And the fifth wave of her story continued with healing confidence, growing friendships, shared dreams, and the steady rise of a woman learning to fully step into her purpose while remaining true to her gentle nature and kind soul. The weeks passed quietly, yet full of meaning and small victories, and the hospital continued to feel warmer, kinder, and more connected than ever before. And Maya noticed how people now worked together more smoothly, sharing support instead of sharp words. And even during busy shifts, there was more patience and understanding. And Maya felt proud, not because she had changed others, but because her calm example had helped open hearts. And one morning, as Maya prepared medications in the supply room, she heard two new nurses speaking kindly about how they admired her steady way of caring for patients and how she never rushed or raised her voice. And Maya smiled softly to herself, feeling thankful that goodness can quietly inspire without needing attention, and later that day Daniel was officially cleared to leave the hospital and continue recovery at home, and a small group of staff gathered to wish him well, and he thanked everyone sincerely, but gave a special grateful look toward Maya and said, "If not for her, I would not be standing here today," and the room filled with warm smiles and gentle applause, and Maya felt emotional, but kept her voice calm and reminded him to stay patient with healing and believe in steady progress. And after the farewell, Maya walked Daniel and his parents to the exit, where sunlight poured through the glass doors and his mother hugged Maya tightly with tears of joy and whispered, "Thank you for bringing our son back to us," and Maya held her gently and said love and care saved him, and everyone played a part. And as Daniel left waving with hopeful energy, Maya felt a deep, peaceful joy settle inside her heart, and she realized that saving a life also changes the one who helps and teaches them gratitude, strength, and trust. And later that afternoon, Captain Reed visited again and invited Maya to tour the training center the following week and speak with young medics about calm decision-making and emotional balance during crisis. And Maya accepted this time with confidence and gentle excitement because she felt ready to share her experience and help others grow. And that evening, Maya prepared simple notes for her talk and practiced quietly at home, speaking clearly, slowly, and honestly. And she reminded herself that she did not need perfect words, only true intention and care. And the day of the visit arrived, and Maya traveled with Captain Reed to the center where young medics trained with equipment and practice drills. And when Maya entered the room, she felt a small wave of nervousness, but she breathed deeply and remembered the faces of patients she had helped and the calm strength she carried, as she spoke about staying grounded during fear, listening carefully to small signs, trusting teamwork, and respecting every life equally. And her voice remained gentle but strong. And the trainees listened closely, asking thoughtful questions and thanking her for sharing real-life wisdom. And Maya left the center feeling proud and fulfilled, knowing her quiet voice had planted seeds of confidence in others. And back at the hospital, Maya continued her daily routine, but now she felt more open, sharing small smiles, conversations, and encouragement with coworkers. And friendships slowly grew naturally, and one evening a nurse invited Maya to join a simple dinner gathering, and Maya accepted, stepping gently outside her comfort zone and enjoying laughter, warm food, and shared stories. And she realized that connection did not mean losing herself. It meant allowing others to know her heart and respect her boundaries, and trust grew on both sides. And as days turned into calm, peaceful weeks, Maya felt her confidence settle naturally like strong roots in soft soil. And she no longer felt invisible or unsure because she understood her value deeply and lived it quietly through care, kindness, and courage. And one afternoon, Maya received a thank you letter from one of the hikers Daniel had saved, expressing deep gratitude and hope. And Maya held the letter close, feeling the ripple of goodness spreading beyond what she could see. And she understood that every kind action continues, traveling far beyond the moment. And as she walked home that evening under warm, fading sunlight, she reflected on how the helicopter moment had been loud, dramatic, and surprising. But the real transformation happened slowly afterward, through healing, trust, and growth. And she felt thankful for every lesson, every challenge, and every gentle victory that shaped her journey. And the sixth wave of her story settled into peaceful strength, renewed purpose, deeper connection, and the quiet joy of becoming fully alive in her own steady, beautiful way. The final chapter of Maya's journey arrived not with loud noise or flashing lights, but with quiet clarity and deep peace settling gently inside her heart. And the hospital moved through another busy season filled with new patients, fresh challenges, and daily acts of care. Yet Maya walked through the halls with steady confidence and warm kindness, and her presence brought comfort to those around her without needing attention or praise. And one morning, as sunlight touched the window softly, Maya paused near the entrance and watched nurses, doctors, and patients moving together like a living rhythm, and she realized how far she had come from the days when she felt unseen and unsure, and now she felt rooted strong and valued both by others and by herself, and she smiled quietly, feeling proud of the growth that had blossomed naturally over time. And later that day, Maya received a message from Captain Reed, sharing that several young medics she spoke with had improved their confidence and calm during training because of her guidance, and he thanked her again for her impact, and Maya felt grateful knowing her words had planted lasting seeds, and she replied with encouragement and kindness and returned to her duties with peaceful energy. And during lunch break, Maya sat in the garden where flowers gently moved with the breeze and birds sang softly, and she reflected on how silence had once been her shield, but now it had become her strength and balance instead of hiding, and she understood that being quiet did not mean being small. It meant listening deeply, acting wisely, and caring fully, and she felt content living true to her nature while staying open to connection and growth. And that afternoon, Daniel sent her a video message showing himself walking steadily outdoors, smiling with bright hope, and thanking her once more for believing in him and inspiring his new path of helping others. And Maya's eyes filled with joyful tears, and she whispered a soft thank you to the moment that had changed both their lives, and she placed her phone down and breathed deeply, letting gratitude fill her heart. And later in the evening, Maya joined a small group of coworkers for tea and shared gentle laughter, stories, and dreams, and she felt warmth in simple companionship and trust, and she realized that community did not require loud voices, only open hearts and mutual respect. And as night fell, Maya walked home under a sky full of stars, and the city lights glowed softly around her, and she thought about the helicopter day, the shock, the fear, the courage, and the unexpected turning point, and she smiled knowing that sometimes life sends powerful reminders to awaken hidden strength and guide people back to their purpose, and she no longer felt the need to prove herself or hide because she trusted her path and her worth. And when she reached her home, she opened her window and let cool air flow inside, listening to distant city sounds and peaceful silence blending together, and she felt calm, steady, and thankful. And she wrote a few lines in her journal about courage, kindness, patience, and growth, reminding herself that true power lives in gentle hearts and consistent care. And before sleeping, she closed her eyes and sent quiet gratitude into the world for the chance to serve, heal, connect, and grow. And the story of the quiet nurse who was once mocked ended not with fame or applause, but with self-respect, purpose, peace, and a life filled with meaningful service and gentle joy. And Maya rested knowing that every day offered a new chance to bring light into the world simply by being herself, and that was more than enough.